Welcome to the Woodpreneur Podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larziliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur Podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur Podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode.
Welcome to a brand new era of the Woodpreneur Podcast. I'm your new host, Jennifer Alger, longtime champion of urban wood utilization and small sawmill businesses. Now you might be asking, where's Steve? Well, don't worry. Steve is working on a new podcast that focuses on architects, designers, and builders. So you can sell more of your product. But right here, we are going to be doubling down on what I know well: sawmills, the wood working community, and the business that is lumber. We are diving deep into the industry and bringing on guests who truly get it. People like you who are shaping the way and the future of the wood industry. So, get ready for real talk, expert insights, and stories that fuel your passion. And today's guests have Sims Acuff from Eutree. And I've known you for, 3 or 4 years, maybe?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. I met you in person. I've known you longer, but I met you in person a couple years ago in Georgia. I went to an arborist?
Yeah, was it ISA event or?
Yeah, Georgia arborists had put on, and I was there speaking about urban wood, of course. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to get to know even more about your business and to share that with the audience. So Sims, what can you tell me about Eutree? Give us a little bit of background, what you did before, and how you founded Eutree.
I got a friend here.
Yep. It's all good.
You just see a paw from time to time. Yeah.
These ratings.
That's right. So yeah, I started in the a tree business. I started a tree service out of college, and then I did that for 13 years, something like that.
So you went to college, and then you started a tree service business.
That's right.
Were you working for someone else's tree service business, or did you just...
Yeah, I went to Georgia Tech, and a buddy of mine there on the crew team was putting himself through school, having a tree service as a college student, and he had a background. He had worked and done it in high school in like the mountains of New York, and we were buddies, so I ended up helping him. So I learned the tree removal business and pruning business during college, and then so when I got out. A couple years later, I started my own tree service, and then I did that for a long time. And then I wanted to start kind of moving out of the tree service and into something else. So I found my way into, let's mill these logs that were, from the trees that we're cutting down. And Atlanta has a lot of big white oak trees, a lot of old growth white oaks. So they make a lot of really nice quarter sawn, and quarter sawn lumber was, really, it still is popular, but it was really popular for flooring for a long time there, over the last 10, 15 years. And so Atlanta had a great tree resource. So we developed, our urban wood brand of forest free, which is the term we coined for, basically wood that was removed for a reason other than the lumber value.
Forest. So this is free from the traditional forest. You weren't harvesting this wood.
Yeah, all because, when you're a tree service, all the wood, all the trees you're removing them for a reason other than the lumber value. So you're not logging, you're not removing trees to meet the demand for lumber. You're removing them because they're dead, dying, or hazardous, or for development.
Feel that your customers were resonating with that mission statement?
They resonated very well. Yeah, it definitely helps open doors in the community, the design community.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, so you decide to start to pivot. What was the first thing that you did when you decided to go from being the one removing the trees to converting those trees into lumber? What was the first thing that you did? There's a little ear there. How cute.
Yeah. That's why I'm laughing, because can't keep them out of the way. So I guess the first thing I did is, while having a tree service, is I bought a Timber King sawmill. So I bought, a pull behind portable sawmill. So I started cutting up the logs and looking for a market for the material. And it turned out like about the only market I could really find was high-end floors, which was kind of a surprise to me. You think if you're using a backyard mill, that you wouldn't be, producing one of the more technical products, the most high-end products.
Yeah.
But it's actually very doable. It just takes a lot more equipment. So we would sort of outsource to a lot of other wood producers around that did different parts of the process.
So at first you were doing the milling and then sending it out to be what?
Yeah, I would mill it and air dry it, and then I would send it off to be kiln dried, and then I would send it off to another place to be reman. So rip both edges and plane it 2 sides, and then it would go to another place to be tongue and grooved, and then it would come back to me. So and
it was still profitable putting it through all of that shipping, right?
yes, it was still profitable. I drove it, so I don't know that it would have been profitable anymore if I paid somebody, and I had it hauled,
Yeah.
unless you were doing a lot of volume. But since I had the tree business, one of the things I've done well for starting this is layering the businesses on top of each other, so one can borrow from the other. I never would have been able to start a wood business if I didn't already have trucks and bobcats and the equipment for the tree business, because you just can't afford to pay all of that debt service or put all that capital into it while you wait on wood to dry and you wait to find customers. So because of the tree business, I already had the logs, but beyond just like having to buy a log, the logs aren't that expensive. So, having to buy the log isn't necessarily a deal breaker or not. It's more that if you need, like I said, to haul it around to different providers would be very expensive if you contracted, a commercial service to haul them for you. But I already had trucks, so I could just take it on my own trucks on my own time that my other business was paying for. There was no, I didn't have a hard cost there to factor in.
Did it reduce any costs like disposal fees or other things? Was there any cost aversion perhaps?
Slight, but I wouldn't say it's not very significant.
So that,
What you produce as a tree business, you produce so much wood versus the percentage of it that you can mill is fairly small. So it's hard to,
yeah.
most of it's going to be pulpwood or should just be ground up or something like that versus like high quality salt.
So it's negligible the cost avoidance that you were getting from it because only so many of the logs that your service was removing made good saw logs. Is that correct?
It's more that like most of the logs are just junk or not worth milling. So you're still disposing of a lot of material and, milling a couple of, nice white oak logs or, whatever high quality logs you might mill. Didn't really put down much of a dent. And actually, Atlanta's markets, the log market's really growing up to where you could sell them. So, I mean, if I was just cutting what I could go sell and make money on. So it's not doing, as far as saving on materials or saving disposal costs, those logs have a value. I could go down the street and I could sell them or I could mill them and, try to make more money off of it.
So, Seth, are you still operating the tree service company or have you moved away?
No.
That's what I thought. I was like, I haven't seen anything about that. So what was the moment that caused you to realize you just wanted to move away from that? And how did you do it?
I did it by starting the sawmill business. So, it's the tree business isn't there's a lot of great things about it, but there's a lot of negative things about it too. And I just wanted to go in a different direction. Eventually, so I started exploring different things, and the milling was one of them. And so, it took about 5 or 6 years to basically grow that up to the point where both businesses were about the same size, and it was hard to do a good job of either, because they were just kind of competing with each other for time and resources. So that's the point at which I sold the tree business and went full time into the lumber.
So is flooring today, is flooring still your bread and butter, your main product?
Yeah, flooring's still the main product. Flooring, wall panels, we're doing a lot of box beams. So, basically architectural millwork is our main product.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say has been the biggest, as you're going from the tree service to Eutree and building all of this up, what would you say has been your biggest pain point or biggest obstacle that you've had to go, what the heck am I doing? How do I fix this? What was that for you?
I don't know. There's so many.
As a small business owner, I feel you. Pick one.
Probably just revenue, just enough, business, just the cycles of, being really busy and then having a hard time getting to it all, and then being slow and just, dealing with the cyclic nature of things. That's probably the most frustrating. Say again?
Like cash flow, maybe?
Cash flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always.
Always. Yeah. That's one of the things with the small business. You got this big project coming up, end of the year, all looks great, but where's that cash flow? And that's something that's, the perpetual, how do I keep that question? So, yeah. So cool. So systems wise, what do you do systems wise that you feel really works for you? Before you were able, as you're building it up, you went from one sawmill and then you started adding things in. Some of those systems that you started to develop and add in before you got to where you are now.
I think it's important you want to kind of keep purchasing equipment. I guess probably, you see a lot of businesses that like never invest in their equipment, and they sort of reach a point that they sort of stop growing, or they do stop growing altogether. And, there's folks out there that have had their business 30, 40, 50 years, and it just never grew past the point, and they're kind of trying to pinch every penny all the time. And I don't think that's the right way to go about things. The way I've kind of tried to structure growth, because, growing from like no equipment to having quite a bit of equipment now, in wood processing, we're vertical from log to pre-finished hardwood floors. So we have, the sawmill, the reman line, the molders, the custom moldings, defect and in matching and finish lines. And
You brought all that in-house that you used to outsource, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And sort of the way I've done that over the years is you always want to keep some debt, I think, in terms of equipment. Like you should have a couple of equipment loans going, or at least one, if you're out there and you have a business and you don't have any loans, think about what's the piece of equipment that would either improve my efficiency the most significantly or provide new opportunities, new products I could make in markets. So whatever you could identify that's the most valuable, that's within your grasp, you should go get a loan, and you should probably go get it.
Yeah.
As long as your cash flow is, reasonably, suitable for it, you should go get a loan, and you should go get it.
Right.
And you should get used to it. Right.
Yeah.
And in theory, that piece of equipment should save you the money it costs you, at least, on the debt service. Either it's going to make you faster at what you're doing, so you're going to be able to go out there and get another job this month where you couldn't get another job because you were too busy, or it's going to let you do a new product or a new type of product or an additional value add. So that piece of equipment should pay for itself. Like you should be able to probably find something that ought to pay for itself, at least given a little bit of the time. Then you take a loan and you go get it. Don't go crazy, but take a loan and go get it. And then that's going to take, it's going to take what, 5 years to pay that off, 3 to 6 years, depending on what you do. Probably try to keep it shorter if you can. And then once that piece of equipment is paid off, you now have that additional revenue that it was creating for you is now profit for you. Even if it wasn't before, it's now profit for you. You're also starting a credit history with the bank. And so it's going to be easier and easier for you to get more loans when you need them.
Yeah.
So now once that piece of equipment is paid off, now you go out and you get another one, identify the next piece of equipment that it's going to improve your efficiency, improve your profit. And then you go get that. And then once that one's paid off, you go get another one. You don't want to get 20 at the same time. You want to get one and then get it paid off, or at least get into a new place where you feel like I can get a second, and just sort of slowly stair step it over time, but always adding something that's going to take you up to like another level. And then eventually you get to a point where you have all this equipment kind of behind you, supporting you. You're able to do all these things. They do get paid off. And then now you have all the revenues from all of, the equipment you've already bought and paid off that's, funding your operation, and you can go get, one more. But you can get to the place where you've got so much more, we're coming in theory.
What's your one more? What's your eye on next? What are you looking at to just increase profitability or speed, which is profitability in your business?
Well, I've moved over to making my own equipment from Woodflow here.
I see that.
So, what I found is that a lot of the difficulties we have aren't going to be solved by, a faster planer or, a faster molder or anything like that. The problem is that somebody's going to push it in one side of the machine and somebody's going to take it out the other and then go to the next machine and the next machine. So it's a very slow process, and it takes a lot of people to do that. And nothing is more expensive than people. So nothing slows you down more than not having enough people. So what I'm focused on now is like, how do I make the equipment that I have more efficient? How do I operate it with fewer people? In the sense that if I have a 2-man operation, one person's pushing wood in, the entrance side of the machine, and the other person's taking it out and stacking it so it's not falling on the floor. If you can do that with one person, and then another guy can go move over to another process. So now you're doing 2 processes simultaneously instead of one. So that's what we're moving towards. So we're developing machinery that basically automated processing, lumber conveying machinery that takes people off of in-between machines. We focus a lot on auto stackers. We have a couple different auto stackers that we do. That's going to let one person feed the machine, and then it's going to stack itself out the other end. So you don't have to have somebody there just catching boards all day and able to run.
So is Woodflow Technologies, is that something like, who would be able to use that? What size sawmill could go up against that? Or what would be your ideal or the ideal situation that technology would fit into for material handling?
Yeah, we see our customer base as medium to small production lines. It could be a large business, but it's not your main production line. Maybe it's a subsidiary, smaller production line, or, for a medium or smaller sized wood production business, you're not going to have, a giant mill. The giant mills have like 3-story lattice work of steel where the wood starts at the top and it goes through, 8 saws that are computer programmed, all the way to a stacker at the bottom. So those are the, giant built-in systems where they take up a whole warehouse. It costs $10 million, $20 million.
Yeah.
So our systems are like, they're small and that like you could pick them up with a forklift. They're modular and that you can pick them up with a forklift and you can move them around your building. They're not like, you don't have a team that comes in and welds it in place in your facility. You can mix and match them, but you could take.
So somebody could contact you and say, here's my business. It comes off the head rig. I need it to get over to my edger and then come off my edger, or this would go to the edger. This would go to the resaw. And then I need it to go down to a green chain.
Yes.
Your product do that. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
And
we've got
different people who have different turns and curves. You can help them lay that out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So we can do a lot of that. Again, these are, modular systems, smaller than the traditional setups, but plenty for, be tough enough and large enough for moving wood around wherever it needs to go.
What's the feed rate on these? How many feet per minute?
Depends on what you need.
Adjustable then?
It's adjustable.
Okay.
Yeah, and it depends on different ones, but you can always run, the rollers faster if you need to. You can gear them up, gear them down. Usually we're targeting around, 200 feet a minute is kind of a standard. A lot of systems are, we've got 2 different stackers. We've got a column stacker That'll stack at 500 feet a minute. And then we've got the smart stacker stacks a little over 100 feet a minute right now. And we're working on doubling that. And it also varies by width of material.
Now, you said you can gear it up or down. Are you having to actually do a change, or can you, with a speed rate or a potentiometer, can you increase the speed on the fly? Is that a possibility? Or
Yeah, you can increase. Yeah. You can adjust the speed on the fly.
okay.
The stackers are computer controlled. So you have like a 10-inch touchscreen monitor with speed controls on it. So you can just type it in, or you can move the slide bar or whatever. For whatever speed you want. So I'm mostly talking about like the maximum speed would be somewhat adjustable. If somebody said, hey, we need to go really fast, we could gear this machine specifically for that faster operation, depending on what it is. If you're running trim in a molder, like custom moldings, you're probably not going to run more than 60 feet a minute. So if your system goes, 100 feet a minute, 150 feet a minute, like that's more than you'll ever need.
Yeah, and you don't want to have an issue at the other end. You want it the right speed for how quickly you can process.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Very cool. Very cool. So how long have you been using this technology at Eutree?
A couple years now, 4 or 5 years. We've been adding to it and doing new things. So we sort of use ourselves as the guinea pig on a lot of stuff. So we've got a couple stackers running. We did recently connect we just put a video of this on, I think Eutree and the Woodflow social medias. We connected the molder. When we do the floors, we run it through a molder to do the tongue and groove. And then it goes out of the molder and goes through a defecting saw, which trims the end square. And it'll also cut a line so you can cut your knots out and stuff. And then the material goes down to an end matcher, which does a tongue and groove on the ends. And that's a pretty, labor intensive process. You have a guy running it through the molder and a guy taking it out of the molder. And then you go to the defect saw and you cut the ends and you got to feed it in, a guy take it out. And then you go to the end matcher and then a guy feeds it in and a guy takes it out. Yeah. So with using three conveyors, we put you can now run, one guy can feed the molder and it goes through the molder and then it moves it over, and we have a zigzag transfer that lets you put the defect saw very close, one board length from the molder, which is typically a problem because you have a saw blade that comes up in the air. And then if you have a jam, if it doesn't pass through and the molder is pushing, then you can really damage your saw.
Yeah.
Damage your saw. So we have a zigzag transfer where the material moves over, and so it can't damage the saw. And the transfer takes it right into the optimizing saw, trims the ends, runs it down to the end matcher, and then stacks it. And so you can do that with one person. So we're going 3 processes: molder, defect trimming, and in matching and stacking with one operator.
Wow. That sounds like a huge savings, especially as labor continues to go up.
Yeah.
And you still have those employees. You're just able to put them somewhere else and keep that profit, get those tasks done that they're always on the back burner.
Right.
I love that. So Sims, what are some of the other product lines? So Woodflow Technologies, I know, is its own entity, but started because of a need that Eutree had, a legitimate need, and it solved a problem, which is beautiful. Love that story. But now Eutree, using Woodflow Technologies, it's producing, I know we've said flooring. What are some of the other products that you produce? Do you sell anything that's not finished, or tell me about that?
Yeah, we sell a wide range of things. We sell unfinished floors all the time, and we also do finished floors all the time. Just depends on what the customer needs and wants. We do paneling. So again, finished and unfinished, however the customer wants it. We're doing a lot of box beams. We do reclaimed, a lot of barnwood floors, barnwood beams, a lot of white oak.
Are you doing anything that would not fit into the urban wood definition, which is not harvested for its timber value? So from an urban environment, salvaged or reclaimed, is there anything you're doing that's not fitting into that?
Yeah, I mean, when I started the business, all we did was urban wood. But as it's grown, we've really moved into, we buy a lot of our wood from other mills or other distributors, because that's just what, people want, or we don't have the trees around here, or we can't produce enough of it, or it's just cheaper than we can produce it here, depending on what it is. We get our customers. We have a mixed source. So now the forest free is a sourcing option. We like that. We try to do as much as we can make it make sense. but it's basically driven by customer demand. So if the customer doesn't, sure, they'll take it if, all things are equal, but a lot of times it's just not available here. Like the rustic white oak, you just really can't get enough rustic white oak around here. And if you did, it's cheaper to buy it most of the time. So for a lot of the floors, since that's in flavor now, as opposed to the rift and quarter sawn, we're just getting what we need to do to, serve our customers' needs and give them the products that they want.
One thing in your business that you are so passionate about that you really want to make sure everyone knows about Eutree. What is that?
I think just our versatility. We have a lot of people that say, oh, they know us for one product, but they don't know us for the other products.
Yeah.
So really just, like builders, architects, homeowners, understanding the wide range of things we can do. That, basically if you're looking for hardwood lumber, like we can supply that, we can help you solve that problem, whether it's custom stairs or custom floors, or you just want lumber boards or slabs, box beams. You could really think of us for all of the wood that you're looking at, all of the hardwood lumber, the architectural lumber you're looking to put in your building, house, whatever it is, whatever project you're doing.
So as you're running your business, what is your next, like what's your current biggest pain point? Like if you could make one aspect of your business either be solved or just go away completely, what would that be and why?
Consistency would be good. If the market would stick with like one product that it likes or something like that. We find we're adapting a lot to changing taste and demands and things like that, which on the processing side is a little bit of a pain to kind of shift over to the next thing or the next thing,
Yeah. I don't think that's going away though. I can't help you with that one. Anything else?
I can't think of much off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's probably plenty of things, but
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So is there anything, so there's nothing challenging you right now that either myself or the woodpreneur community at large could really, that you could go, man, the industry really needs to brainstorm this and help solve this. Is there anything going on with that?
I would say one of the challenges right now for the industry, I mean, if you're doing urban wood, I'm not really sure what you're doing if you're not making floors or high-end kind of architectural stuff, because it's hard to compete as a small mill on anything else. But the floor market is really like moved to the engineered products. And I think that's because things have got so cheap with China over the years that it just makes more sense to import it than it does to make it. So you see, I think there's been a massive growth in imported flooring, where we used to make an engineered, now we can't make it it costs us as much to make it as it does to buy it for what a lot of people want. So we find, we're sort of forced to buy, foreign platforms because people are coming in and saying, we just want engineered, like we don't want solid. And I think a lot of that is the companies that have been, bigger companies that have really benefited from just importing foreign made floors from Asia have probably been able to put a lot of marketing money into changing the taste of people and scaring homeowners, the residential market, away from solid floors, saying, oh, it's going to warp, it's going to have problems, like you have to get engineered. To make engineered with any kind of efficiency domestically requires like $500,000 Ogden, PUR floor layup system, So unless you got $500,000 laying around just to start to learn how you like making engineered floors, then you can't just jump into laying out solid wood onto the plywood. Right. You can do a cold press, but it's very slow and tedious.
So that answers a question I asked before. You're not doing any engineered, you're doing solid wood flooring. Do you see?
We do engineer. We buy it. We buy the platforms because that's just what people, it's that or nothing sometimes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And we do lay it up. So we do a cold press, but it's very labor intensive. So we only do that usually if you're looking at like, you want like a reclaimed oak floor, like sawn from beams, and you're just willing to pay a lot of money for all the labor it's going to take to do a small batch of that. So it's doable. But again, like with the, with the Asian markets and not having any tariffs over the years or anything like that, there's just.
What are your thoughts on tariffs? Are there opportunities there? Do you see Do you see that there's going to be some opportunity for the United States lumber market with regard to that?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because the flooring over there is just cheaper than you can make it here, even if you're like in the business pretty much.
Even if you're getting your logs for free and it's your labor and you're not paying anyone,
Right.
you can't cut it for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that'll really help. The tariffs on that'll really help bring back solid wood floor. That's one of the things Urban Wood Network could push back on a little bit, is saying, hey, solid floor isn't really that risky if you do it right. And plus you get longer lengths than you do with the engineer. You're really limited to like 6-7 foot lengths when it comes over on a, container ship. So
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Finish that thought. And then I have a question for you.
No, you go ahead.
That I had heard that the slabs that if you have a slab in your home that
Concrete.
concrete floor, yeah, or concrete, yeah, a concrete slab, that engineered flooring is the only way to go. Is that true?
I would say that's pretty true. There were some glues. I didn't get too much into it. We worked with some installers back. This is probably 8 years ago or something like that. We had a few customers really want to put solid on a slab, and they did. And there was some really special glue. It was like $2 a square foot or something like that just for the glue. But they did it. So I mean, I never heard anything negative about it over the years, so I assumed it worked well. So I think it is doable. It's not something like I would recommend, but like, we used, 10 years ago, we used to do that engineered floor, the one that we make with the cold press. We would do that for like sections of like people's basements and stuff. So we sell you a floor, you buy a floor from us for the main level and the upstairs, and then you would put some engineered in the basement.
And you
Well,
would patch, you would send it off.
yeah. It would be identical, right? But with the vinyl tile, or the vinyl, the vinyl flooring, colors have gotten so much better that they'll kind of pass. So people are like, well, it's 70-80% looks as good as solid, and it's the basement. So they've moved to that. So you're losing business there. And then, just the cheaper engineered markets, the cheaper engineer being produced in Asia cuts back on it too. So we've really just seen a lot of the flooring market get cut back over the years.
Yeah, yeah. That's one thing that we've never moved into in our business out here, is actual flooring. Like, we sell wood that people take then and turn into flooring, but we're not doing the flooring. We're not getting into that market. So I don't know very much about it. So thank you for sharing all of that information. So yeah. So Sims, we're coming up to the end of our session here. Is there anything you want to ask me? Is there anything you're curious about?
I don't know. I'm not great with questions.
No worries, no worries. What are your thoughts on what is the biggest thing that's facing the wood industry in general, or perhaps the urban wood industry, that could cause things to go sideways if it wasn't righted? Is there anything in that wheelhouse that you can think of that might need taken care of in order to make sure that we have a solid foundation moving forward with the wood industry?
I'd like to see things go back to more of like a decentralized model, like it used to be, 100 years ago, where you have like a local sawmill and they're producing the wood for the local community, right?
Love that.
And it's gotten to be where that's just really not feasible anymore because of grading standards for the, for the framing lumber. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, but it does prohibit smaller mills from doing that. Also, the big mills make it really cheap. I still go buy my 2x4s from Home Depot instead of trying to mill pine. It's just not worth it. It's cheaper to go buy them.
We do this.
Yeah, so it's hard to compete there. But even for hardwood lumber and things like that, I think technology is close to a point where it might let us start to do a decentralized mill that makes sense. But I think one of the things that we have to do, and this is something we're trying to tackle on the Woodflow side, is like a big mill, they try to, like a big hardwood lumber mill, I may be off on the numbers here, but something like maybe 1,000 to 2,000 board feet per day per man, something like that. So a big sawmill that employs 10 people, they're going to be looking to cut 15 to 20,000 board feet a day. And if they can do that, they're profitable, right? So whatever that number is, man day per board foot, per amount of board foot, or board foot per man day, there is a profitable number there. So you don't have to cut, 20,000 board feet a day to be profitable. If you can cut 2,000 a board foot a day, but you can do it with one person, now you're as profitable as a larger mill. So like, how can we make equipment that lets you do that? And you can get a nice sawmill that's fast, but like if you can't stack the stuff and sticker it, off your Woodmiser 4000, like you cut 2,000 feet a day, but you got to have two more guys to stack and sticker it. So it doesn't, your board foot rate per man day is like 700, not 2,000. So how do you get that down to where, those boards would come off the mill and go stack themselves, something like that, so that you could get that one guy could meet that production rate. Then you would be able to sell into, you would be able to compete with those larger mills.
Yeah.
And then it could make sense, for a tree service or, another company to say, hey, well, if we get $200,000 worth of equipment or whatever the number is, and we know that we can cut, 2,000 feet, 2,000 board feet per day per man with this equipment, then we have a business there. We know we can sell it, and then now you have a business, and then you could start doing that, and you could start having more, smaller mills popping up around. Go ahead.
If there was a world where the small producers, they're producing their small amounts in their boutique way, in their niche way, they're producing the amount that makes sense for them. Some of them, of course, want to increase so that they have material handling solutions and they can get more production, but we're still working in small communities. If across the nation, small communities were milling wood in the amounts that made sense from them, wood that came from those communities or from those local regions, producing a product that met very specific standards and guidelines, very specific grading standards, and then aggregate that on a national level to where we're putting out there to where there's the ability to compete with the bigger industry, but in a very boutique way. So it's very, you're telling that story. You've got the small local business, but you're acting and competing with the bigger markets. Like what are your thoughts on that? Something I'm playing with, so I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds great. I think the challenge I see most of the time is just making the wood come off the mill profitably. I mean, if you're happy with running a sawmill all day, as a business owner and making, $40 an hour, $50 an hour, plus paying all your expenses or whatever. I mean, I just don't quote me on that rate, but whatever, if you take I can produce this much board footage of this species in a day that I can get regularly and it's worth X amount, what's your money over time? And from my experience, it's not that much. And so, it's not an amount that a lot of folks are going to be happy with. And it's an amount that's hard to scale.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you increase that to where there's essentially a surplus of wood coming off of the saw, and it's not, it's hard work, it's tough work. So it's like, you want to get paid if you're going to do it and have an opportunity to, hire some people to do it and all that. So I think that's the challenge, is getting enough wood to come off the saw per person. Yeah. That it really makes sense.
Yeah. And you can do that with accessory equipment or
right
material handling equipment. And
right.
Those are some great solutions. All right. Any parting wisdom for the listeners? Any advice you might give somebody getting into the industry, or any of your years of wisdom with Eutree that you can share?
What's a more specific question? I can't think of much I haven't already.
That you haven't
heard out there.
Heard somewhere else. Yeah. You're looking to quit your day job and go into the sawmill business. What do you say to them?
Don't do it.
I knew you were going there. Well, Sims, thank you so much for being on today, for working through, sharing your years of wisdom and experience and kind of the journey of your tree service to Eutree to Woodflow. Give us a way, give the listeners a way to reach out to you, to follow you on your website, to find your website and to follow you on social media. Where are they going to go?
You can go to Eutree.com or at Eutree on Instagram and Facebook. You can go to woodflowtechnologies.com, or you can go to woodflow_technologies on Facebook and Instagram.
Can you spell Eutree for us? I think Woodflow, they're going to, but Eutree's a little.
EU, here's Woodflow. EUTREE, like elephant umbrella tree show. And maybe don't not get into the sawmill business, but maybe give me some time so I can come up with the equipment that's gonna, help you do it with less of a struggle. So should probably connect me and Woodmiser about that or something.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to listen to more podcasts, go to Woodpreneur Podcast and on your wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.